He'd been carrying this burden since high school, but karma was not done making him pay for his past mistakes yet. The words seemed to have flown over his head, and he looked at the doctor once again, clearing his throat and feeling his wife squeeze his hand in support. He asked once more for the man in white to repeat the news. Quirkless. That was the only word Bakugou picked up on. The only word he needed to hear in the first place to understand what the situation was. Never in his life did the thought ever cross his mind that he would father a child who would be quirkless. Never did the thought cross his mind that he would father a child who would be a deku. He watched as his wife reached over and comforted the crying child, not fully understanding why their quirk had not manifested at the age of 5, and why it never would. This was some twisted fate, wasn't it? Some plan by someone up there to die with him and make him regret every single self-centered, arrogant, and hostile remark he had made in his youth. It was as if the big man on top had grabbed him by the collar and shook him silly, all while yelling, "How did it look like from the other side?" His answer? It sucked. Because he knew what his kid would have to go through. He knew the relentless bullying and the dark thoughts these bullies would put into his child's mind. He knew, because at one point, he was their relentless bully. And though he still was too much prideful to admit it out loud, he knew what he did to Deku as a child was wrong. And it took him years to crawl out of the self-loathing inferiority complex he had felt around himself because of it. His ego was not just a front at age 16. His ego was what was keeping him from having that mental breakdown and coming to the realization that being Bakugou Katsuki was not always a blessing. He came out of it though, not completely free of his sins and past mistakes, but enough to start to realize them and attempt to make up for them. He knew that he didn't deserve pity or respect, but as the walls came down and he returned to the land of the living from whatever far off place he had separated himself to, the people around him were willing to listen and willing to carry a piece of his mistakes. His burden was not over yet though, as he watched his wife comfort their child once again. His son cried the whole way home, begging his mother to explain why he didn't have his father's quirk or his mother's. Bakugou attempted to swallow another lump in his throat as he heard him, but then remembered that his throat was dried up as well. He staggered out of breath and saw his wife hugging their son. He knew no amount of comfort would fix this. Nothing would. Go jump off from the roof of the building and pray to have a quirk in your next life. The past remark bounced around in his messy head. The memory of that far-off middle school classroom, the arrogant smirk he wore, and the tortured face of his childhood friend, as well as the shocked faces of the two people he considered friends at that point in time. How the hell would he comfort his son when he told someone just like him to commit suicide? It was unforgivable. It was inhumane. It was what came out of his mouth, and no matter how many times he wished to undo it, he knew he never could. I think you should go talk to him, Katsuki. He really needs his dad to tell him it's going to be okay. She spoke to him, bringing him out of this separated state from reality. Katsuki shook his head. And say what? That you're more than likely going to be called weak and defenseless all your life? That your dream of being a hero like your old man's all but shot? Yeah, great idea, babe. He needs his father right now. He needs someone who can actually make him feel better. And who could do that better than you or myself? We're his parents, Katsuki. Deku, Kirishima, hell, even Uraraka or Todoroki. But not me. He slammed his fist into the couch and let out a staggered breath while Anne looked at him in worry, knowing that he was taking this as hard as their son, but now considered that he might be taking it even farther by his last actions. So you're never going to talk to him? No, I just don't know what I'm supposed to say. Katsuki went inside, wrapping her arms around her husband and hugging him tightly. If this is about how you treat everyone when you were kids, of course it is. This has to be some kind of cosmic karma, right? I bullied the kid who didn't have a quirk and regretted it later in life, but that wasn't enough. Not only do I get to carry around this burden of telling Deku to kill himself, but the universe often decides that even watches my own kid suffers from some little shits who will do exactly what I did. Do you really think you're the type of father? No. The type of person to sit around and watch people get bullied? His mouth was closed by the familiar hand of his wife. Her eyes were stern and serious, but her arms were still warm and comforting. This was her famous look of, I know you better, so shut the hell up and let me talk some sense into you. Also known as the look that made him want to marry her in the first place. Don't say anything, just listen for once in your life, Katsuki. Martin breathed and brought him into another hug. He grumbled, and he returned the affection, allowing her to know that he'd give it his best shot to do so. You're not who you used to be. If you were, there was no chance in hell I would have let you marry me, let alone have a kid. I know you aren't proud of that egoistical boy from the past, but you have turned into someone that I'm proud to call my husband. You save people, so I doubt you'd let Katsuru get bullied. I doubt you'd let any kid get bullied. You know what it's like from both sides, and you're strong, valiant, and loyal to whatever cause you find worth it. You think you'll have this burden forever, and while I can't say what you did in your youth was admirable, I can say that it shaped you into the man you are now, into the hero you are now. And right now, Katsuru really needs one, but more importantly, he needs his father. Not Izuku, not Ejiro, not Ochako, and not Shoto. He needs his father to tell him and help him get ready for what's to come. I know you. And you won't sugarcoat it for him. You'll tell him that this world is harsh and cruel, but you also tell him that if you believe in yourself, that anything is possible. Look at you as a prime example. You had the quirk everyone thought would be fit for a villain, but you had become a hero, and a damn good one at that. So, even if this burden is making you feel suffocated right now, even if you think this is some form of payback for past mistakes, just remember one thing, Bakugou Katsuki. His wife pressed a kiss to his forehead and took his hands into hers. She let out a breath of air, and her eyes met with his. She smiled through her tear-stained eyes and squeezed both his palms. These hands belong to someone who saves people. These hands belong to someone who fell in love. These hands belong to someone who helped make and bring a child into this world. And these hands carry a burden that is never forgotten. These hands are strong because they belong to a Bakugou. And right now, these hands belong to someone who needs to go and help a smaller pair that's trembling because they think they'll let their idol down. The owner of these hands needs to let their son know that he's not a failure to his father, because only his father can stop a similar burden from being placed on his son's shoulders. Bakugou's eyes widened, and he bit his lip in anger at himself. He nodded against his wife, and gently moved her aside, finally realizing how selfish he had been. This had never been just about him. It was about all three of you, but most importantly, his son, Katsuru. His son who carried the same guilty conscience and the same pair of ruby-red eyes. Bakugou slowly crept to the familiar bedroom of his child and knocked, waiting for it to be opened. He knew the weight was on his shoulders, but he needed to try. He needed to let his kid know he wouldn't have to carry this burden alone.